Hello, hello. Uh, this video is basically the different types of manga. Well, different types as in just different categories, genres, I guess you would call them. Like how we have the kids section, the adult section, the young adult, the romance, yada yada yada, stuff like that. So let's get to it. The first one that I have to mention is children. Wow. The first one I have to mention is children's manga. Or what's the word for children? Like kudama. But either way, kids manga. And really, the only thing I can think about is Doraemon. I'm sure there's plenty of others. I guess Hello Kitty could be one, but I don't know if that's a manga. But these, I don't think I've ever read any actual children's manga. So I'm assuming that most children's manga are probably gag manga, something to keep kids interested, or teach them a lesson, or something that serves a small point, but not. Well, I don't want to say small, but a big point. But you get what I'm saying. Make it too much noise, Chris. But bottom line, it's children's manga is aimed at children. That's obvious. Now the one that's really popular over here in North America is shonen. Because I mean we have Shonen Jump, which are Shonen Jump manga. But you have the Naruto's, you have the Dragon Balls, the Bleaches, the One Pieces, the was it Rurouni Kenshin? Oh yeah, really good series. But then you have others that don't quite get the big spotlight, like the big ones, which is like Siren or well, there's a new one, Attack on Titan. Well, I say new, a few years old. I don't really care for Attack on Titan, but to each their own. And then you have things like Soul Eater, and well, you can push Death Note, but I'd categorize Death Note in two things: shonen and something else, which I'll get to in a minute. But this is shonen's aimed towards boys. I mean, younger boys, but it's bam, 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 fighting, fighting, fighting stuff, or all the guy things. Gotta do this, gotta impress the girl kind of thing. Yeah, but we're gonna do it awesomely because we're guys. Stuff like that. As in, look, what did I mention? Like Dragon Ball, Naruto, fighting, fighting. Rurouni Kenshin, samurai, but still fighting. Soul Eater, fighting. So, really, shonen can be summed up in fighting, but it could be really so much more. Because you have really good in-depth stories, but that depends on the author. It's not always just fighting. It's overcoming obstacles. It's just having a good time. But the offset of shonen is shojo, which I can't deny it. I love me some shojo. But you have things like the first one that pops in my mind for shojo is Sailor Moon, that or Nana or Nana, whichever way you want to pronounce it. And I like both of them. Sailor Moon is more to me shonen for girls because she's fighting evil. Come on. But she also goes through the romantic interest things, the tuxedo mask and all. I don't want to give too much away for people who've never seen Sailor Moon. If you've never seen it, go look it up. But same thing with Nana. Nana is really, it's about two girls with the same name. There was two live action videos 5 years ago or something like that. And they're really good. The second one kind of differs from the manga somewhat, but it's still, both of them are really good. The first one better than the second at parts. I like the second one better, but a lot of people like the first one. The sad thing about Nana, fun fact, is that, or not fun fact, but the author is on hiatus with it, and I need the rest of it, and she won't put it out. But, small gripe. But there's so many other shojo manga as well. You got Fruits Basket, you have Aran High School Host Club. That one's really fun. So, that got turned into an anime, and also a live action series, which I haven't seen the live action series. The anime is really good. But shoujo is generally geared toward girls, younger girls. I mean, you can read what you want whenever, because how many people in the U.S. I know read teen fiction and they're 30 years plus? Hey, if it's a good story, it's a good story. Nothing wrong with that. But shoujo, to me, is more of the romance. But that, obviously, I'm speaking from a guy's point of view, so can't quite say too much. But it's the romance, the wonders of, does he like me? That's generally the stories in shoujo. I mean, it's a story, so you can have variations of it, where that's just a small part of the story. The bigger part is saving the world. Sailor Moon. Yet again. So, shonen and shoujo are really the two big competitors over in the U.S. Now we get into the older stuff, or intended for an older audience. This is what I was mentioning with Death Note. Death Note is classified as shonen, and it ran in Shonen Jump. I mean, you can't get away from the title of the genre description, if that makes sense. But really, to me, Death Note is too dark for young kids. Well, I mean, at times, yes, it's not always dark, but a lot of it's dark. So I would go into the next category, which is seinen, or seinen. It's S-E-I-N-E-N. Seinen. But seinen is just typically, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. If I pronounce any of these wrong, I'm sorry. But if you can't tell, I'm still in my shirt from yesterday, and I just woke up. But that's not the point. Seinen is more, it's aimed towards older males, basically. But you read what you read, so it could be females too. But seinen titles could be Hellsing, Elfen Lied, even if you really want to go to it, Chobits. Because it's about a guy, I have no idea what his age is, like 20s, 30s, something like that. But he's living on his own, and he gets basically a robot girl. Check out Chobits. It's done by Clamp, and it's really good. It's only 8 volumes long, too. So, and you got other things, to keep going on the darker note, you have Gantz, and just great stuff. Yeah, you could put Ghost in the Shell in there as well. I'd put Ghost in the Shell in there, at least. But it's generally more complicated plots, more darker action, as in more blood and guts kind of thing. I mean, that's a horrible, just like, denotion of it. But really, if you look at seinen, most of the time, you just see blood and guts. Whatever. The other side of that is the adult works aimed towards women. Sadly, I don't see much of this in the U.S. But then again, I can say I'm probably not looking for it, because I'll look at the cover and not care for it. That's just me. That could be my own misguided stuff. But I was looking up, I have my research paper. I was looking up different types of what called adult women manga is josei. Now, there's, according to Wikipedia, josei has like '07 Ghost or '07 Ghost, Paradise Kiss, which is by the person who did Nana, but I haven't read it, and that one sounds fun. But they also categorize Loveless in josei. I haven't read that either. But if it's anything like seinen, I would say it's the adult form of shojo, which seinen is the adult form of shonen. There's variations, yes, but I'm just generalizing all of this. So, you have 5 stuff, basically. Children's manga, shojo, female, young girls manga, shonen, my fingers don't want to work, shonen, which is aimed for young boys, seinen is aimed for older guys, and then josei is aimed for older women. Now, brief history lesson. Back in the, I want to say, 60s or late 50s, you had the rise of manga because of Osamu Tezuka, which is the god of manga. He created over 700 titles in his lifetime. That's 700 pieces of work. Now, some of them were just one book, but you say, like, Buddha, he wrote a series called Buddha. It was either 12 or 14 volumes long. So, volumes. And he did 700 titles. So he probably did well over 1,000 or 2,000 actual volumes of manga. So many, many hours of drawing and story coming up. But either way, that's a topic for another series. But in the 50s, Tezuka was pretty much what he's referred to now as the god of manga. But a lot of people were seeing him as in just kids manga. He did Astro Boy. Okay, well, Astro Boy goes around flying and fights people. Cool. And then he also did female manga like Princess Knight. The shojo. The early adoption of shojo. And that was, here's the love interest, and the princess has got to cover up her identity. So this, and that one's a really good series too. But I cannot remember the guy's name at the moment. But somebody came around, I'm going to say the early 60s, and came up with a manga form called Gekiga, which is pretty much just, this guy wanted to take on darker stuff. It was seinen before seinen. And it was more, for lack of a better term, grotesque than what was being showed at the time. So, and that of course became popular with the 60s because all the people who grew up in the 50s reading the Astro Boys, the Princess Knights, it was darker and more of an adult story to an extent. So a lot of other people followed this trend, and there was a sort of like, whenever, good reference, look at the 80s and with Frank Miller, how Batman got really dark and stuff like that. The Watchmen, I don't know too much about American comics, so I can't talk on that much. But everybody got tired of just the happy-go-lucky, good ending, all that. They wanted something different. So they created Gekika, which is just darker manga. So, and that still continued now. I mean, there was a magazine called, what is it, Garo? Garo. But it discontinued. And you do see the books published over in the US, because you have MW by Tezuka, who experimented with the idea of darker stuff, more realistic. That was another thing about it. It wanted to be more realistic, not cartoony. But you have things like, there's a Picasso manga that just came out about a year or two ago. And it was a guy who pretty much just was nuts. That's the way I describe it. But it was really good. And that would be technically called Gekika. Now, if I mention manga, I had to bring up doujinshi. Before you mention anything about hentai or any eroge or porn or whatever, doujinshi originally means self-published works. It could be manga, magazines, or a novel, or whatever. Or even a video game, I think. But it's a self-published work. But since we have things like Comiket, the big, massive, like Comic-Con over in Japan, but it's Comiket, and it's held in December and August, I think? July or August. But a lot of people sell their work at Comiket. And what sells is things people know. So the majority of it, I assume, I've never been to Comiket. I do want to go though one time. Even though it's a lot of people and I'm not quite a people person. So that might be a little hard. But you have parodies. But the things people know are parodies. So you'll see what happens with this character. Parodies sell because people like them. What else sells? Sex sells. Sad truth. Everybody likes sex. Now, talking about the differences between hentai and real porn is a whole different conversation. But right now, it's just the different types of manga in general. And doujinshi is a type of manga. It's a parody work. Sometimes. And the parody work leans towards porn. It happens. So, that's really all I have to say on it. There's, as I said, 5 types of actual different types of manga. Now, can I speak on a lot of it? Yes and no. I can speak on a lot of it because I counted about, in 2010 when I lived in the apartment, I had over 800 volumes of manga. And I'm sure that's increased probably by 200 or 300 by now. Yeah, that's where all my money's gone. I can't help it. I love it. I've loved the manga since pretty much I found out about it in the late 90s, I'd go with. Because to me, I like manga more than American comics, and it's because of the style. I prefer more curved lines than straight. Yes, there's curved lines in American comics, but generally, whenever I was growing up, it was always American comics were superheroes. That's because of where I was. I couldn't find as many American comics. I saw the Spider-Mans, the Avengers, the Fantastic Fours, which is all cool and good. But I wanted more detailed stories. So I fell into manga and I got into Ramna One Half, a dude who turns to a chick with cold water and fights guys. Okay, that's weird. But it also has, 20 love interests, if not more. Okay, that's weird. Rurouni Kenshin, samurai. I don't know much about samurai. Dragon Ball Z, the giant freaking blast coming out of his hand. He's training and using martial arts. Okay, cool. But then you have things like Gundam Wing, that was on TV. I don't think there's a manga form of Gundam Wing. I think there may be for Mobile Suit Gundam, could be a manga form. But that was giant robots fighting. It's like, oh, cool. It's like Voltron. And then you look at Voltron and find out that that was originally from Japan. So it all interlocks. But for me, I fell into manga more because I enjoyed it more. American comics, I'm now getting into more American comics. And that's kind of sad because I'm kind of missed the heyday, I think. But if you want to look up more about manga, look up a dude named Frederick Scholt. I think that's how you pronounce his name. But he wrote a book in the 80s called Manga, the World of Japanese Comics. I haven't gotten it yet, but I've read plenty of articles from it. And then I've watched the interview with the author, and he knows his stuff about manga. He talks about the history of it. And relating to the history, there's a book on Osamu Tezuka, the god of manga, as I mentioned, by, what's her name? Nasu Onoda Power. And it's called The God of Comics, Osamu Tezuka and the Creation of Post-War War II Manga. That's a really good book. I have read that one. And that one tells you about how Tezuka... I'm not trying to make a video about Tezuka, but he is just awesome. He's the god of manga, come on. But it talks about how... The book talks about how he pretty much used cinematic effects in manga. How you would see some... In one frame, you'd have somebody running. Next frame, a little closer. A little closer. A little closer. And then you'd see him back away as looking backer. That's a horrible way to describe it, probably. But it's a really interesting book to see how he studied film to make his work better. Tezuka was a big fan of Disney. Walt Disney. Not the company, but the... Well, I guess the company. But more the guy and his art style. That's why a lot of, like, especially children's manga, looks like Disney. The big eyes in anime are because of Tezuka, who was inspired by Walt Disney, who had the big, like, Mickey Mouse eyes now. I know Mickey Mouse in the beginning had just dots, but now he has big eyes. But the big Disney eyes translated into manga, which translated into all the big eyes that we have now in manga. So... This is a little bit longer video. Sorry if anybody who fell asleep halfway through. But you can't really talk about manga without trying to cover all the branches. And there's probably branches I missed. Because there's so many different types. It's the world of imagination. Try to identify the different types of books. You can go on for years probably. Because books have been around forever. Since... the first actual page making. So the early 80s are probably before Jesus, so probably BC if you want to go that route. I don't know if we technically have a precise date when paper was made. Maybe. I don't know the number. I do know that... Well, I know according to Wikipedia that there's a manga on a scroll that was made in the 1700s. It's drawings, and all I can remember right now is there's frogs and people. They interact some way. But they consider that scroll to be the first form of manga. I don't quite know enough about it, but if I do know more, I'll probably make a video on it. So... I hope you enjoyed, or at least now know a little bit more about manga than you did beforehand. So until next time, Johnny.